While Germany may have chosen its new leader to replace Angela Merkel on a national level, on a local level, Berlin residents also cast a vote on another election, and that was the decision to expropriate the city's apartments from corporate landlords. More than 1 million Berliners took part in the campaign Expropriate Deutsche Wohnen and Company, and they claimed success with this referendum. The vote is not legally binding, but if the city government decides to follow the referendum results, about 240,000 properties will become socialized. So we know about rent and the problems that a lot of people have to find affordable housing here all over the country and in many parts of the world. And it is interesting to see how successful this Germany case would be. To give us more details, we're very pleased to be joined by Jacobin Magazine Deutschland's editor-in-chief, Ines Schwertner, on the line. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us and helping us understand the situation better here in Korea, ma'am. Could you first give us some background on this movement, Expropriate Deutsche Wohnen and Company, and overall what the public support of this has been?
Yeah, so because of the rent was rising so much and because of, gentrification and all these processes, lots of smaller initiatives got together in order to use the basic law that we have in Germany to actually have a referendum, which we have very seldomly in the German state.
Dealing with high rents, how to do that? One way is to get it out of the hands of corporate landlords, which is what was the movement here in Germany, and we're getting some explanation on this Expropriate Deutsche Wohnen and Company movement. Hello?
Yes, I'm still there.
Yeah, could you just talk a little bit more about the referendum and how successful it was then?
Yeah, so now that we actually, we had 3 stages where we had to collect signatures. So it was it took us many years to actually get to the referendum stages. As I said, it's really seldom to actually do it. And so we collected over 300,000 signatures in order to get the referendum going. And now it was at the same time with the national election, which was helping. And so at the end, we had over 1 million people cast a vote to say yes, which was actually a major majority in the city. Which is a major success because actually never in the German history, the paragraph in the basic law that we are using, paragraph 15, that says you can socialize land or even means of production for a greater good was never actually used. So we would be using it for the first time, actually.
Right. And as you know, in Europe, perhaps not quite as much, but in countries like the U.S., the term socialized has this connotation that is somewhat scary to people for some reason or another. But in this context, could you just explain what exactly it would mean to have a lot of these corporate-run apartments be socialized and the process that would take place to make these houses more affordable for people who need to live in them?
So what it means is that the city would actually buy them back because they were sold, they were privatized 20 years ago. And so the city would have to buy them back, and we would have to discuss at which price they would have to do that. And to socialize means not to nationalize, so it doesn't mean that this will be then state-owned necessarily, but it means that you kind of have a new form. It's actually similar to what we have with our TV stations, like public TV and public radio. It would be like public living, and actually renters and the city would form like a council where they would actually decide upon prices and rents and everything.
It is, as you point out, a very popular notion, a proposal, and it would seem to be something that would be popular for residents in various cities around the world where many of the residents are struggling to find affordable housing. In your view, as we note that this referendum had very, very strong majority support. What do you think the city of Berlin will be doing in terms of a response? As we understand, and as I noted, this is not necessarily a legally binding, so the government is not necessarily mandated, but how do you think the city of Berlin will address the issue?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's not legally binding, but it's, I think, politically binding, because if you have such a large majority, then the next government cannot just ignore it. Otherwise, I think there will be really social, uprise, and there will be discontent. Because actually, if so many people cast the vote, they expect something to change. And because last year the rent cap was also implemented in Berlin, but then it fell because of also judicial concerns. I think Berliners are really now nervous about rents getting higher, and if the government is not doing anything at all, they will be frustrated even more. And what the mayor, who's probably going to be the next mayor from the Social Democratic Party, she doesn't want to socialize the apartments. So she's one of the, she's not an enemy, but, we have to address her. And, well, there is a majority. There's more people in Berlin voting for the referendum than for any other party. And so, they would have to handle that. And I think the campaign will use its political pressure to kind of force them to implement it, or at least parts of it.
Right, and certainly this is considered to be quite a progressive, maybe to some even a radical move within Europe and to the rest of the world. But do you feel, because we are getting a sense that there are people who are just fed up with the way things have been going in a hyper capitalistic world, which just seems to dominate most societies around the world, including here in Asia. Do you believe that the model of Berlin and hopefully maybe the success of this referendum actually being enacted into real policy could serve as a bit of a benchmark for other countries around the world? I'm not sure whether it's going to be possible in Seoul, but let's say there was a referendum here. Or do you think it's very unique to the situation in Germany with the coinciding of a new election and a new government taking over and just the German society and culture that allows this? Or do you think this can indeed be something that other countries and cities around the world can adopt?
Well, I just know that because you've been calling me, the rest of the world was definitely watching.
Right.
And many other cities have called, like Barcelona or U.S. cities, cities from everywhere called and said, what can we learn from you? And I guess it is really special in a sense that we have this paragraph in our basic law that allows it. And also Berlin is kind of special with this, it's really rebellious, has a squatting scene, and it's really a really center-left city in a sense. So I think with all of that, it's kind of special. But I think since, the markets are similar in so many different cities and the problems are the same, I think every mayor of every city has to kind of confront that. And if you want to have political, any sort of political control over these markets, you would have to go deeper. You would have to find a more radical solution, I think. And socializing could be something that is not, as I said, it's not nationalizing. It's not getting back to the socialism that we don't want. It's like a new form. It's just like a new form of it's actually social democratic in a sense.
Right.
And I think other cities and also other countries can implement that in order to control this overheating of the market.
Right. And so kind of the excessive aspects of capitalism, you don't have to kind of label this as a left-wing thing. Even regular SOCDEMs can be somewhat behind something like this. And it really is a fascinating test case of what can be possible, perhaps even in a city like Seoul. We're going to have to leave it there. Jacobin Magazine Deutschland's editor-in-chief Ines Schroettner, thank you very much